There we go. All right. So for everybody on the phone, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep. Excellent. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So like Eric said, I was on the GIS help desk for the first 6 years I was with the company, and I was the lead for a number of years. I've been over in design for 4. So I've got a lot of experience with GIS. I'm trying to forget a lot of it, but so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so we're going to be talking about conflict resolution. Let me get this out of the way here. Everyone can see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Okay, so so small world. So it's the when we say small world, that's just our version, the who makes the version of GIS that we use. So it's the main asset register for electric distribution, OH and UG networks, the authoritative source for distribution connected model, critical business applications such as OMS, ADMS, and SIME are directly impacted by the data in small world GIS. So you see down below here, we've got GIS in the middle, and then we have all these different systems that GIS touches. So, the moral of the story here is that the quality of the data in GIS is very important. You have to be conscious of the changes you're making, especially when it comes to conflict resolution. And when you get into doing you'll hear me say this multiple times throughout the training, but when you're doing conflict resolution, you just need to make sure that, if you don't know what you're doing, you stop and you ask somebody with more experience, whether that's somebody on your team, myself, the key is just to reach out and ask. So you can see here, all these different systems that GIS touches, especially from a OMS standpoint. Connectivity is very important in GIS, and when that gets broken, that makes bad things happen over on that side. So, Lauren or Angelo, did you guys have anything you wanted to add just around this slide, just to give context, or?
No, you pretty much covered it. Just quickly to introduce myself, Lauren Liberati from the Data Process and Improvement Team. Angelo Scavetti and Sam Lembeck are also on the call here. As Jeremy said, if you guys need help resolving conflicts, we would rather have you stop and contact one of us rather than just make a decision. And just to add a little more context to what Eric said earlier, it wasn't that people were maliciously, making the incorrect decision and creating bad data. It was just simply a lack of awareness that resulted in bad decisions being made in work requests, which resulted in all the data in top and the downstream systems being impacted. So, again, we just want to really stress that you stop and ask for help. It's not just about the data. Sometimes the tool can be confusing. So just one more time, reach out to any one of us if you need help.
Yeah, so especially from a connectivity standpoint, just to kind of give you an idea what can go wrong if conflict resolution is done wrong. If you're doing a merge and you do it incorrectly and there's primary involved, you can break connectivity. What I mean by, having the circuits connected in GIS, so when that gets built over to the outage management system, it breaks their model, and then, we've got to go back into GIS and manually rework that area to fix it. So, sometimes that takes many hours to do depending on, how big of an issue it is. So, all right. So data management and quality. So there could be significant data quality impacts if conflicts are resolved incorrectly. Remember to consider that more recent information may have been posted to GIS top since your design was created. You should not blindly submit your work request or file changes to top without reconciling your changes with each difference in top. You may be presented with conflicts that don't appear to be related to your work. If you're unsure about how to handle the conflicts, ask for help from another super user. Data monitoring processes will identify errors that are created by incorrectly resolving conflicts, which could result in retraining or revocation of conflict resolution privileges. So, all right. So now we're going to kind of start going through some of the material. So the definitions, conflicts, how conflicts occur, conflict resolution, some examples, and helpful tips. If you could, it sounds like somebody doesn't have their phone on mute. If you could just mute them until you have a question so we don't get a bunch of feedback on the line, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So definitions. So what a merge is. Merge is the process of passing data from a higher alternative to a lower alternative. This is done when you refresh your design. Usually this would mean passing data from top to either a file or a work request. So, you know, there's different spots in the design life cycle where it's going to make you do a merge. So primarily when you're trying to go from proposed to design complete, it's going to want you to do a merge at that point. Posting, so what posting is, the process of passing data from a lower alternative to a higher alternative. This would be complete in GIS status in our system. So usually this would mean passing data from either a file or a work request to top. So with a file manager, you know, you go in, you create it, you're updating some data in GIS to fix it. You know, that's going to go to complete in GIS right away. You know, the data will be up at top. With a work request, that's not going to go up the top until, you know, it goes through the closeout process, you know, 699 complete. There's as-built changes that need to be made. It's not going to go to complete in GIS status and post the top until then. So alternative, that's just a fancy way of saying any file or work request. It's a version of data in GIS. And then down below, we've got some of the terms that we'll start to see when we get into doing conflict resolution. So we've got top, parent, base, child, and current. So top's the most recent version of GIS. This is the official corporate database, the way that GIS looks today. So top is always changing throughout the day. You know, with file managers posting, if there's corrections or as work requests get closed out and post up the top. So top's continuously getting updated throughout the day. So parent, when we get into conflict resolution, this is the version of the object as it presently exists in the top. The current top, as it is now, after changes have been made by another file or work request. Base, so this is the version of the objects as they existed in top at the time of the file or work request was created. What is in top at the time that you take the file or work request out becomes this file or work request base. So basically, GIS is just it's keeping track of what top was for the objects that you're manipulating when you initiate that work request. So child, the version of the object as it presently exists in this file or work request. This is based with the changes you made in this file or work request. So basically, that's just child is what's in your work request and any changes that you've done there. So current, in terms of conflict resolution, this is a combination of base, parent, and child. The version which GIS is in the process of creating as it's performing the merge. This is what will go to top when the file or work request is posted. So as you're going in and you're doing conflict resolution, you're selecting between parent and child or possibly some of the other values. Current's going to be, the combination of what you selected. Any questions? what I've gone through so far.
Yes, I have a question. This is Diane Klaus. I'm
Sure.
getting a little confused whether when we merge to either parent or child, when you say that's what's going to be posted on top, that doesn't necessarily mean like just what's going to be posted on top in your current design. You're saying on top, like, for everyone to see. Like, I just had an example yesterday where there were two views. One had a whole bunch of primary replaced, and the other, that was the child, and the parent had the primary not replaced. And I asked the designer, well, which one are you looking to keep? And she said the replaced version. So I merged to the child. And now I'm wondering if I didn't do the wrong thing by doing that, because it didn't just post to her design. That way it's posting to top.
Well, you're not going to, the key to remember is that when we talk about top, it's, you know, what's up in top. You're not going to post from a work request to top until it closes out. So
Okay.
when you're doing, when you're doing conflict resolution, you're changing what's in that work request.
Okay.
Not what's up at top. It's not going to go up to top until it goes through the closeout process.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So can I just jump in right here, because I think that was a little bit of a good segue. Oftentimes we see people accepting child or keeping what's in the work request because they think that's what, you know, this is my design, this is what I'm working on, so I'm going to keep what's in my work request. But what people forget is that since that design has started, or maybe even since the day before, top may have changed. So there may be more recent information in top that you need to consider bringing down into your work request. And Jeremy's going to show you how to do that. So it's not always an all or nothing thing, like a one or the other thing. Sometimes you can combine those two data sets to actually make it accurate in your work request. I just want people to remember that just because you're working on a design and it's your active design, top may be more recent in some situations. So we need to not forget that.
Yeah, I'll talk about that later in the presentation, but yeah, you get into these situations where you have to do kind of hybrid conflict resolution where you have to go in and edit the objects that come up as conflicts, and you may have to manually input data, and I can show you how to do that later on when we get into doing the live examples. All right. So a conflict, what that is, so occurs when GIS is unable to resolve differences in the various versions while creating the current version. Conflict can occur if an object or an annotation is moved or deleted, an object's attribute is changed in two different ways in two or more of these alternatives. So the annotation conflicts will they'll come up fairly frequently. If you take an annotation or you're just moving it around, you know, maybe you're doing white spacing for your construction sketch or something like that, or somebody else touched that annotation up at top for the same reason, you'll get a conflict for that annotation. But, you know, it can be an annotation, could be an attribute in the object, but something's been changed there, so that's what triggers the conflict to come up, and we have to go in and interactively choose which one we want to keep. All right, so if conflicts exist, they are found when a refresh is performed. At the time you refresh, you must resolve the conflicts before you can change the state of the file or work request. When this file or work request is applied to top, the changes in current are posted, creating a new top. So, you know, that's basically just saying if you do conflict resolution, those changes that you make eventually when that work request closes out, they're going to go to top. Like I said earlier, there's different times it's going to force you to do the merge. Pretty much any time a work request transitions in GIS, so that's going from proposed to design complete, or if it's going from design complete to post pending, when it's going through the closeout process, it's going to do a merge at that point. When you open your work request or file, you may see a message that there is possible conflicting data and your design should be refreshed. And you see the pop-up there that comes up in GIS. You should refresh your design whenever prompted. Refresh before you make additional changes in your work request or file. When conflicts have been found during your refresh, you will see this message, the one down below. Now, if you don't have conflict resolution, and you do get that message down below, if you click OK, it's not gonna open up the conflict viewer that you guys are gonna see here in a little bit. Once you do get the access, when you click OK there, it's gonna bring up the conflict viewer, so you'll see that. The other thing I would say here, you should refresh the design whenever prompted. I always advocate for people refreshing the design as much as possible. It's a lot easier if you do get conflicts, it's a lot easier to take care of them in small chunks versus waiting till the end when you're transitioning to design complete and you accumulate a whole bunch of conflicts. Not really a big deal if you're doing a service work request that's only going to be open, in a proposed status for a couple days. But if you get into a larger project where, say you were doing like a voltage conversion where you're dealing with a bigger area, there's more of a likelihood that you're going to get conflicts there. So, it's better to refresh regularly when you're going into the work request and resolve any conflicts you have then versus wait until the end and then, you get 20, 30 conflicts and it turns into a longer process for you.
Yeah, so sorry, Jeremy, just to jump in one more time. So just something that users don't always know, Small World tries to keep track of every change that has happened since you created your file or your work request. So if you created a job and it's going to go on hold for 2 years, Small World in that 2-year span of time will keep track of every single difference. And what that does on the back end of the system is it makes that job really, really huge, and it makes the system slow for everyone. So that's why we really push for people to, every time you get in your job, refresh it. Bring those changes down from top into your work request or file, because again, the same applies for file managers. We should not be keeping them open for long periods of time. So just wanted to make a note there.
Thanks, Lauren. All right. So how conflicts occur, you ask? So file or work request is created. Another file or work request is created in the same area. One of the alternatives gets completed and posted at the top. The remaining file or work request is then refreshed. GIS does not know which information is correct. A conflict occurs. So generally, there are 2 types of conflicts: when an object or annotation, pole, transformer, wire, etc., is moved or deleted, or when a change is made to an object's attribute, for example, the pole height, switch number, street light bracket length, etc. Okay, so now we're going to get into kind of a high-level example, a basic example of conflict in GIS, and we'll kind of step through what that looks like. So we've got top in GIS, and we've got our alternative 1. So in alternative 1, there was a change to pole number 1. The ownership code was changed to code 001. Then over in alternative 2, on a different work request or file, there was an additional change in that one to pole number 1. So in that one, the ownership code was changed to 998. So alternative 2 goes ahead and it posts up the top. So now that ownership code up in top has been changed to 998. So at this point, alternative 2 is closed out, it's posted, that change is up in top. So now we've got a difference here. We have our alternative 1 where it's still set to 001. We do a merge from top into alternative 1, right? and then a conflict is detected for the pole ownership codes for pole 1. So, you know, we have to now decide between 001 or 998. So conflict resolution is about making your best educated guess by the evidence provided. Keep the mindset of what happened when. Oops. So we'll look at that more, but there's a lot of different, you know, you've got base available, you've got parent available, and there's also the audit history records that you can look at, which I'll show you guys later. Lauren alluded to those a little bit, but anytime you're making changes in GIS, there's an audit history for each object. So it's going to, you know, if you change the pole height or you replace the pole or something like that, it's going to track that change in GIS. So you have that available to you to kind of go back and look at and see who made what change when. So if conflicts are present at the time of refreshing, the conflict viewer window will pop up. We see that down below. The conflict viewer will list all the conflicts you have with this file or work request. So you're going to want to select any of the conflicts listed on the left side by clicking on them with the left mouse button. So you see the viewer down here. So this one's pretty simple. We've just got a conflict on our transformer installation. There's one. You know, but if it's a work request, you know, this is a pretty simple example of a conflict, but if it's a work request, it's been open for a little while, you know, again, you know, you're doing a lot of primary work. You know, you may have a lot more conflicts. Here we see the conflict viewer again. So the attributes of base, parent, child, and current can be seen in the bottom right pane. So you see it gives you these, you know, they're all in columns. You've got your base, parent, child, and current, and then all the way over to the left you've got the attributes. And then you'll notice too, and we'll see this more when we do the live examples, the conflict viewer gives you some visual indications of where the conflicts are. It might be tough to see, but all the attributes down below here where they're the same, you see they're in a light gray, so there's no difference in those attributes, but the attributes where there is a difference with the status and phasing, you can see that it puts it in bold, so you know that those are the attributes that have conflicts, and then it also assigns a number to the different values that are conflicting there. So you'll see everywhere where the status is existing, we've got the 1, and then where it's retired, we've got a 2. So same thing with the phasing. You see we've got A phase is set to 1, and then C phase is set to 2. So it does give you a visual indicator in the conflict viewer which attributes are in conflict. Okay. The top right pane shows how the object looks, parent versus child in GIS. So you get a graphical view of what the difference is here. So in this case, this was a transformer installation that was retired. You see in parent, you can get a graphical view of what the differences are there. So if it was annotations moved, it's going to show you, you know, the difference there. By default, this opens up to parent versus child. There is a drop-down menu right here where it says parent versus child, and you can take that and switch that to, you know, say if you wanted to look at base versus parent, you know, you wanted to compare top when your design was taken, or your work request was taken out, versus top now, you can do that. I'll show you how to do that when we get into the live examples. The navigation in these windows is pretty much the same that you have out in the main GIS. You've got, you know, the hand tool so you can pan around, you can zoom in and out, and then there's a home button that will take you back to, it'll center the map view right on that object that you currently have selected for conflict resolution. So you can, this is where I was talking about, you can get into kind of hybrid conflict resolution where you may want to keep some of the attributes of, you know, what's in one of the data sets, but, you know, maybe you want to keep the geometry of it. You can go in and edit those objects in the GIS editor, and I'll show you guys how to do that. So you can right-click on the object in the left side of the conflict pane and select Edit Object, bring the object's editor up in GIS. From here, you can do a go-to to see how the object currently looks in your work requester file. And you may also make changes directly in the object's editor rather than selecting parent or child. These updates will be shown under the current column. So an example of that would be maybe, you know, you move the pole in your work request, right? So in turn, the primary moved. But in the meantime, you know, somebody went into top and they changed the phasing on a tap or something. You know, we went from A to C phase on a single phase tap. So you want to keep the geometry change that you made in your work request. And when I say geometry, that's basically, you know, the object's location. You know, you're moving it. You want to keep that change, but you want to get that phasing change. So you get into where you need to go in, click Edit, and go in and change that phasing in the editor. So I'll show you guys how to do that when we go through the live examples. So in the conflict viewer, you right-click on the object in the conflict pane and select Resolve To in order to choose parent, child, or base. If you choose parent, you can check how it looks in your work requester file. And if it doesn't look right, you can change it back to child by selecting Resolve To Child. So that's a real important piece of this. When you're doing conflict resolution, until you hit that complete merge button, you can make changes. But once you hit complete merge, that's kind of the point of no return. You can't make any changes to, you know, whatever conflicts you had then. Once you hit complete, it's going to, you know, take whatever changes you made and the conflicts will be gone. So, you know, just make sure you're resolving them the right way, and, you know, if you're unsure of anything, ask. So if only some of the attributes are correct in either child, parent, or base, do not use the Resolve To option. Follow the instructions that follow. In the conflict viewer, select the object you want to change. Right-click on Edit Object, and this will bring up the object's editor, and that'll come up out in the main GIS view. It'll bring that to the front, and then that object that you clicked Edit on is going to come up and be in the editor. In the editor, change the attribute or information, and then click the Update button, and then you will now see updated attributes in the current column. So basically that's all it's saying is, you know, for the example I gave you before with the phasing, once you go in and use that edit function on the object, it's going to update that in the conflict viewer in the current column. Once all the conflicts have been resolved, click on the complete merge in the top left corner of the conflict viewer. Once you hit complete merge, this cannot be undone. If you hit it accidentally, current will be automatically accepted for all the conflicts that you have changed, and you can post wrong information at the top. So, like I said, that complete merge, that's kind of the point of no return. Just make sure that, you know, you have all your conflicts resolved before you hit that. There is a cancel merge button that I'll show you how to use. When you hit that cancel merge, it'll allow you, you know, if you're unsure of how to resolve the conflicts and you want to phone a friend, you can hit that cancel merge button, and it'll take you out of the conflict viewer, and then those conflicts will be available for you to come back and resolve when you have some help. So, for example, assume that you're working with a pole object and there seems to be a difference of opinion on the correct number for the pole. It's a stub pole and anchor. When you create your work request, top showed the pole is 23.5. At the time you were in the field, there was only a span guy, down guy, and anchor attached to the pole, and you renumbered the pole to 23S for stub. After you created your work request, I created a work request and attached secondary to the poll and changed the poll to 23-1. I apply my work request to top before you do. So here you get kind of a graphical representation of what that's going to look like. Sorry about that. My Bluetooth headphones died. So you'll see here what that's going to look like. So you've got top before the alternative, which would be base, set to 23.5. You create your work request. So at that point, you've got a child value of 23H and then a base value of 23H. You change the number in your work request, and so child is now changing over to 23S. Still 23H over in base. Somebody else comes along and they post their work request where they're changing it to 23-1. And then when you come back into your work request, you'll see here you've got 23S for current and child, 23-1 for parent, and then 23H for base. So conflicts occurred. The poll number could be 23-S, 23-1, or 23H. And you have some decisions to make. So any questions? Okay. Nope. If you have any questions, just jump right in. Okay, so resolution number 1, after reviewing, you determine that poll 23-1 is the correct poll number. You would instruct GIS to resolve the parent, making it the current value and complete the merge. So when you refresh, this is what you're going to be prompted with in the conflict viewer, and you're going to resolve the parent, complete the merge, and post the top after you select that 23-1. So your current will change to that value. Okay, so resolution number 2. After reviewing, you determine poll 23-S is the correct poll number. You would instruct GIS to complete the merge. So if you wanted to keep what was in your work request when you're in the conflict viewer, you don't have to make a change to that. It's going to be, it'll be set to that 23-S. So you go ahead, child's correct, I want to keep that change, I'm going to complete the merge and post the top. So some helpful tips, refresh before you start work on your file or work request, right? When possible, make changes in a file to correct the discrepancy between the field and top before taking out our work request. So to put some context around that, it's always good to make changes in a file manager. If you go out to the field and what's in GIS is drastically different than what's in the field, it's better to go in, create a file manager, make those changes, and post that up the top before you get into your work request. That way, when you get into your work request, you're going to have that correct data there, and top's going to be correct in that area for everybody else. So, if you make those same changes in your work request, they're not going to get posted up until that work request gets posted. So that might be, depending on what kind of work request it is, if it's computable, it's going to sit out for, probably a couple years before, that's constructed and gets posted up the top. So if you create a file after your work request was created and post the file at the top, conflicts occur. Replaced by parent will normally but not always be the correct solution. So review each conflict item before completing. Pay attention to object set dates and check the audit history on the object relationship tab of the objects editor for more information. I brought that up earlier. The audit history is just that tracking of the changes that have been made. So the other benefit to creating the file manager and making your changes at the top before you take out your work request are that when you make those changes in the file manager, it goes and posts up. So when you go in and do a refresh on that work request, or when you initiate that work request rather, it's going to have those changes. So you're not going to have to go through that conflict resolution process. So cancel merge, I talked about that earlier. That ignores all selections made up to that point, and you can start over. If you've made any changes, you'll need to do an undo to last save before you can cancel merge. That undo to last save button, that's just up under the file menu. So that's just going to, if you've gone in and you start resolving conflicts and you get to a point, you're like, I really don't know what to do with this one, and you want to get out of it, but you've already made some changes, you'll have to use that undo to last save function so that before it'll let you cancel the merge. So then this last part we need to change. You probably won't be able to get a hold of the help desk, but if you're unsure how to resolve the conflicts, you can get a hold of me. There's going to be other super users within your group that have that conflict resolution access so that you can, reach out to them with any questions that you have. So, we've said it a bunch of times, but, if you're unsure, phone a friend. All right, so that is it for the CAN portion of the training. Now we're going to get into doing some live examples of conflict resolution. So, any questions on anything from the PowerPoint?
Hi, Jeremy. This is Lauren. Can I make one more note? You talked a little bit about creating a file manager before you start your work request. I think that's very important. One other thing to be aware of is if you're working in an area and you see that there are work requests that are in a post-pending status, which means it's the final status before it goes to top, what we see a lot of times is users will create a file and draw in all of that data into top, and then the work request will eventually complete and duplicate all of that work. We really don't want that to happen. So if you're working in an area and you see a job is ready to post in that post pending status, maybe it's just stuck, reach out and ask for help. We can push that job through to top most times, and then you'll have the most current version of top available to work off of, rather than you having to go create a file and draw that stuff in manually.
Okay. So why don't we take a quick 5-minute break? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
How long does it take for a file manager to post after you create it? Do you know? It should be
pretty quick.
Okay.
It just really depends on how backed up the queue is. So if there's a lot of file managers that are trying to post, it could get backed up, but generally it's going to post probably, I would say, 20 minutes ish.
Oh, okay.
When you create a file manager, 20 minutes if everything's working correctly. When you create a file manager, they take precedence over work requests that are going to post that are just going through the closeout process. So the file manager will jump right to the front of the line. They take precedence over those. So it should be fairly quick. So what you may need to do... Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, the thing I was going to say was with the file managers and any changes up at top, I get this question a lot. People will say, oh, I created a file manager. I'm not seeing my changes up at top. If you go up and do a file roll forward, that'll roll forward the data in GIS, and any changes that may have occurred in the meantime, then you should be able to see those up at top of GIS. So.
Okay, so if we create a file manager, it takes about minutes to post. If we don't see it, we can roll it forward, and then we'll probably see it sooner. And if we see work requests in the area that are already making the changes, we contact you or Lauren to try to push that work request through, and then we can do our design.
Yeah, I mean,
that's correct. Okay.
Yeah, we're working on formalizing some of the contacts now that the GIS help desk is going to be limited. But one of the other things we're doing is we're working with the Maps and Records team to regularly try to push those jobs that are ready to post through to top. So hopefully once we get on a better cycle, you won't have to worry about that. But yeah, if you do run into those jobs, reach out to one of us.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And I mean, we've always had those situations. I mean, we'll have if there's conflicts, the job will get hung up before it posts. So it's as simple as somebody going in, doing a refresh on it, resolving the conflicts, and then pushing it that last piece where it goes to complete in GIS and posts. So, any other questions on the line? Okay, why don't we take a quick 5-minute break, and then we will come back and do some live conflict resolution. Thanks. Bear with me for another couple minutes here. I just got to get the GIS started back up.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, okay.
Just if you want to pass back to me, I can tackle the job real quick.
Sounds good.
Did you pass it back, Jeremy?
Oh, sure. Stop sharing. And I don't know how to do that. Otherwise, let me scroll down. There we go. Should be good.
All right, here we go. Let's see. You dialed on the volume on yours? Or is that Steve? You dialed Steve down. There we go. All right, so back to the SharePoint site. Go to Design References, GIS. So like I said, we got a couple of things here. Let's tackle this one real quick. What's that? Distribution Design SharePoint site. So I came up with this job aid the other day after looking at a couple things, and specifically talks about some stuff up there at the top, you know, why we're doing it. And then also this part here.
Can you share your screen?
Oh, yeah. Is that important? I'm going to share some content. Uh-oh. Where'd it go? All right, so here we go. So right here, introducing a couple things. 265 requirement for storms. Basically to track, keep track of stuff you got at the help desk and see how long it's going to, you know, impact of reduced manning up there. Introducing the term GIS conflict resolution super user. That's the designers that, or anybody that has specific access to actually do this conflict resolution that we're talking about. So our designers, some of our designers are going to have that. And then the issue tracker. I sent a couple emails out about this in the past, and we can look at that real quick. And that's right here in the SharePoint as well. I outlined a couple things here. Things that we should be able to solve just as a designer. We don't need special access for any of it. Some of the validation errors, work request transitions, unless it gets hung up. Some storms areas related to the design set issues, QA/QC errors. I'm going to build on this list, but there's just a number of things that you don't need any special access at all to fix it, although some of these could be very difficult and you need to call the help desk instead. But then specifically for the conflict resolution, these two things, design conflicts and multi-merge conflict resolutions. That's when you need that special access. And then there's some errors that nobody in our group can solve for us, except maybe we had success in a traceback error the other day. All right, so more to come on that, but in general, traceback errors, relinking work requests, any coding that needs to be done by IBM, or your system is simply locked up. All right, that's stuff that we really can't help on our end, short of trying to log off, but sometimes that doesn't help. So talk about different levels that you want to take care of your issue at, and if you can resolve it at the lowest level, that's terrific. Go ahead and do that. So at level 1, I want you to enter your issue into our SharePoint GIS issue tracker. And for one, it's to share lessons learned and to basically collect info about what people are struggling with so we can target some so yeah, enter your issue in there, and if you can solve it on your own, great. Be specific on what it is. But if you have a conflict resolution and you don't have the access, go see one of the local designers that has that access. All right, and I made a list down here in the bottom of the folks at your platform that have that access. All right, or will shortly. And then I just added this note in here just now for Angela, Lauren, and Sam. If you have any questions, just need a little help or some backup on a conflict resolution to reach out to them. I think I got everybody's name right. So then if you have an issue in your local platform and your group can't figure it out, perhaps there's a person at another platform that can help you. And basically this process is just making ourselves smarter as a group. But then, hey, if you're stuck, if there wasn't a conflict or whatever, you actually have to call the Field Force Help Desk. All right, and this is the process we need folks to follow. With any other old phone numbers or emails or anything like that, they're wanting to make this by a phone call. My luck with the Field Force Help Desk lately is they answer very quickly, and they try to help you quickly. And if they can't, they'll open a ticket up for you. So use that specific phone number there to call your Field Force Help Desk. They'll see if they can solve it. They may know right away that they can't. And if they can't, they're going to open up a ticket. And that's the same thing that you would do if you go to the IS portal. So the ticket number they're going to give you is something you can track there. All right? So if you're calling them and they can't help you out and they give you a ticket number, go ahead and add that 265 to storms and a design remark, and that the process for that is in the next couple of pages. And also, you know, hey, we've called the Field Force Help Desk. It's been a while, and this is a high priority job for whatever reason. The process for getting that escalated is tell your supervisor, and they'll have to send an email to those 4 people there, and they will get that work request of yours, pull it out of the stack, and add it to the do next please list. All right? So definitely keep track of this phone number here and follow this process. So not everybody's going to have access to conflict resolution, and be leaning on you folks a little bit to help the other folks at your platform to, hey, go ahead and throw your issue into that tracker, that type of thing, and help them through the process that we're talking about here. So the next couple of pages just talks about adding that additional requirement and what we're specifically looking for in the design remark. And then we're going to have a report coming out for that. So that's there for you to refer to on the SharePoint site. And for our issue tracker, that one's over here. All right, so I looked at a couple of these yesterday, and I think some of them are closed out. So let's see, I think it was probably this one. Marcial, this one of yours, I think that was closed. So on this list, it has a number of items here. And if you scroll over it, there's going to be a block here that you can check. And then you go up here and you say edit item, and then pull up everything in a list here. And you can update it as you go. So I think this one here, Marcel, I think it was status 60. I think this one's resolved. Is that true? Marcel? Bueller? All right. Well, I make that assumption that it's cleared out. The specific issue that you're having, I'm going to add different things into this right now, and basically some functionality to steer you to the right direction. But down here, you can cut and paste. A snapshot would be perfect, so you can get the exact verbiage of the error that you're having, and then when somebody else comes in and takes a look at it, they'll know exactly, can have a really good clue about what you're looking for and what your issue is. Perhaps we can solve it internally. But when your issue gets completed, go ahead and throw a date in there, and then we can tell that we don't have to address that one anymore. And then here's where you can set up, hey, did I solve it locally or the help desk or whatever. Looking for a rough idea how long it took you, and then who helped you out, and anything you know about what the cause or the solution was, how you went about solving it. So we can add that to basically compile a good list here of the common and even the rare GIS errors that we're having, and we can refer to this to almost as a help manual for ourselves for issues that we're having. If you want to add a new issue, you just click on one of these down here. Go ahead and put it in there, and then reach out to the folks that either, if you can solve it on your own, do that. If you can't, reach out to somebody else to help you out. and at the very least, the help desk, when you get the response back that it's fixed, ask them, hey, what was the resolution? How did you fix it? And if it was something that a designer can do, or if it absolutely had to be the help desk, make that annotation in there as well to help us out. So yeah, don't delete anything off of here. Just update it as completed, and then it'll just scroll down. It'll get shuffled to the bottom, and we won't have to look at them as much. Anybody got any questions on the job aid or the issue tracker here? All right, if you do, let me know, and I'll do my best to help you out. I'm going to pass back to Jeremy now, and we're going to do some, there we go. And that should do it.
Can everybody see my screen on the phone?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so did you guys have any conflicts, or everything you did have has already been resolved? I didn't know if anybody from the group had any ready to go.
I got one in an email yesterday. I'll look it up, see what exactly it is. Here it is, Jeremy. 56192844. Oh man, she clicked off the number. Shoot. I guess we can't do that one. That's a 7-digit number. Have to pick another.
All right. All right, so I've got some teed up here ready to go, so we'll go ahead and start working through some of those.
I'd like to know where you're working because that speed is unbelievable. I've been opening up a work request for 15 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not. It probably is because it's read only. This one's post pending, so it's not writable right now. I might have something to do with it. But so this one, I'm just grabbing post pending work requests that we're trying to close out that have conflicts, and those are the ones we're going to work through. So I'm going to go ahead and do a refresh on this. So there you go. This is the pop-up that you get. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And that is going to bring me into the conflict viewer. So okay, so I'm just going to go through kind of the functionality of the viewer really quick. I mean, we looked a lot at this stuff in the PowerPoint, but so over here on the left, you'll see this is my list of conflicts. So this is every object that I'm going to have to go through and take a look at and resolve conflicts on here in this work request. You can look at them one at a time. You know, if I just click, you see it's taking me to where the conflict is and highlighting it for me. or I can select multiple at once. So if I just click this first one and I click the shift key and click on that second one, it's going to allow me to look at both of those conflicts at one time. So you could do that with all of them if you wanted to. Yeah, this one might not be applicable because it looks like the conflicts, we've got some way up top and some way at the bottom here that are pretty far apart. So, but there may be situations where you want to look at multiple conflicts at once, and you can do that. So you can see here, it's going to try to make some decisions on how to resolve, and that's going to be this resolve to column here. So you've got changed in child right now. Then the first column here, that's just going to be the object. And then the second one here is telling you what specifically the conflict is. So,
Jeremy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you clicked on poll before, down below, there was nothing highlighted or bold between the base parent, child, and current views. Did you say something would appear down there?
Yeah, generally it should. When you're grabbing a bunch of them like this, if you scroll down through the list, yeah, it looks like it only shows you the first one that you grabbed. So you'd have to go through each of these first and figure out how you wanted to resolve it. You know, you can resolve multiple conflicts either way, but there's pretty limited circumstances where you're going to want to do that.
But isn't the only place to figure out what you want to resolve to that space down below, comparing the different views?
Right. So when you select multiple here, you can look at it graphically in the window. But yeah, if you want to see the attributes, you got to select them one at a time.
Okay.
The other thing you see over here, I got a bunch of objects with this plus next to it right here. So if I start clicking on those, that's going to show me any child objects that may be under that. So you're going to want to take a look at those as well if it has them. So you can see it kind of changes how they look based on whether there's a conflict or not. So you see, like out here on this piece of primary, all my attributes right now up top are in this light gray color. That if you see them in light gray, that means there's not a conflict there. But then if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, you can see I have a difference with the route geometry, which is just basically the way that the wire runs, how it's snapped up to the poles. And then I have some other conflicts here for annotations. So you see basically what this is telling me, this piece of primary up at top, parent, right? The line voltage annotation and the feeder number annotation aren't there. You see where it says unset, and then over under child here, you see we have an annotation that is there. So, you know, it graphically tells you in the viewer here, you know, what attributes are in conflict. So you definitely want to make sure that if it's an object that has child, you know, if it has the plus sign next to it, that you want to expand those. If you right-click, let's see if we'll, I think I got to select them all here, and do expand fully. It'll expand all of them if you want to see the all the things under it, and then you can do those one at a time as well. Right? So if I want to see those child objects, and you can, you know, just do that by clicking that plus minus over here as well. So this type, I was talking about this before, this is telling you what the conflict actually is. So it abbreviates it. So G is for geometry, T is for topology, A is for attribute. If you go into the kind of CAN small world documentation, if you just click the question mark here, there's a really good explanation on what all those things mean. And then if you look up top here, it also will tell you whole structure conflict. It'll tell you what those are as well, but if you want to read into deeper about the types of conflicts, you can go into that CAN documentation. I think Eric has a copy of that on the SharePoint site as well. And then you got the complete merge and cancel merge buttons here. I'm not going to do the cancel merge because when we did that in the WebEx a couple weeks ago or last week, that's what locked my GIS up. So I won't show you that, but that's that cancel merge button. So again, if I went in and I made changes and I wanted to use that cancel merge, but I had already resolved a couple conflicts, it's going to want you to use the undo to last save button right here. You'll click on that. It'll say, are you sure you really want to do that? Click yes, and then it'll come up and say that conflicts were not handled, and then you can go ahead and get out of the work request. Again, that would be for, if you weren't sure what you were doing and you wanted to get out and have somebody else take a look at that. Over here on the right side, you've got the graphical map view. So when you start clicking around on the different conflicts, it's going to go ahead and update that. Interacting with this is pretty much the same as you would out in GIS. Like if I use this pan tool, it's going to take me around. And change the map view. If I look at something way far away and I want to get back to what I was looking at, I just click on that home button. You can also use the back and forward button right here to go through your changes. Like I said, this is pretty much the same as it is out in the regular map view in GIS. And then up here you'll see this is where you can switch the map views for the different views. So when you open up the conflict viewer, by default, it's going to be set to this parent versus child. So it's showing you I've got what's in top on the left and what's in my work request right now over here on the right. Now, if I wanted to, say, compare base to parent, all you got to do is click here, and we'll do parent versus base. And then you can see that it updates this map view here. So most of the time you're going to want to stay in parent versus child, but there may be situations where you want to look at, switch the map view to see the differences in the map view. That's how you do that up here under this menu. Okay. And then down on the bottom here, you've got your attribute list, base, parent, child, current. Again, attributes that are not in conflict are going to show up in this light gray color. So, you want to scroll all the way down the list and look at what changes have been made. So you see here, we've got a conflict on this foreign pole number right here. And we also have, for the GPS location as well. So you want to, these are the attributes that you want to look at, these ones that show up bold like that. Attributes where there's no difference, they'll show up in that light gray. As far as configuring this, you can grab, if you hover right over the middle here, you can take this and resize it. If you want to see more or less of the conflict list. And then you can also collapse that totally. There's this little arrow right here. If I click on that, that's going to collapse the conflict list. Click it again, it's going to bring it back. Same thing with this one right here. If maybe you wanted a little bit more space to compare, you can do that. But, most of the time you're going to want to have both of these menus open and visible. What else am I missing here? So when we go in and start making changes, you're going to see you've got this checkbox right over here to the right. When we go in, we interactively make changes doing conflict resolution. It's going to automatically put a check mark next to this. If you get into one of those situations where you don't need to make changes to what you're resolving, say you know, it picked child, like for this one right here, and we wanted to keep child, you don't have to change that, but you can go in and put a check mark next to it so you know, hey, I looked at it, that one's good to go. But if you go in and use the resolve tool, it's going to automatically put that check marks next to it right there. So just a handy tool, you know, with these bigger work requests that have been sitting out for a while, you know, we don't really have a ton of conflicts in this one. There's like 10, 8, whatever. You know, we do see work requests that have been sitting open from time to time. They might have like 50. So it's a lot more time consuming going through that list. And obviously you want some visual indicator of what you've already looked at. All right, so I'm just going to go through this first one here and show you guys the resolution, and then we'll go through and I'll pick people from the phone, and you guys will get to pick what you think we should be picking for the conflict resolution. So, the last thing, so when you want to pick your resolution, I'm just highlighting one of the conflicts, and then I right-click on it, and that's going to bring up this whole menu here. So the Resolve 2 menus here, you see I've got that parent-child base, and then you've got the expand and compress where it will open and close the objects if they have child objects. And then this one's kind of handy. I mean, a lot of times you're going to want to see all the information, but if I click on Show Only Conflicts, that's going to go ahead and any of these objects that have child objects, it's going to get rid of the ones that don't have any conflicts between all the different versions. So it kind of simplifies what you're looking at. You can also do a go-to from here. That'll just pan you over to the object, and then this is also where you edit, access that edit tool. So is it keeping up in the WebEx? Like, are you guys able to see my clicks as I'm opening menus and things?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because sometimes there's a little bit of a lag. So if it starts lagging, just let me know and I'll slow down. So if I wanted to go in and edit this poll, I could do that. If I right-click here now and I go to Edit Object, it's going to think here for a second. There you go. And then you see I can go now and edit this poll if I wanted to make changes to it manually. I can do that. You just have to use that update button after you make the changes. So, like I said, you get into doing things like this where, you know, you can't really pick in between what's in your work request and what's in top. There may be attributes from both that you want to keep, and this is how you do that. So any questions on the functionality of the conflict viewer so far? All right, I'll take that as a no. So I'm going to go through and we're going to start doing conflict resolution on this. So this first one that we've got here, we've got an attribute change and a geometry change. So I'm just looking at that right here, and it'll tell you up in the poll structure conflict, geometry, and attribute. Again, geometry is just a fancy way of saying the location of it. Something's changed with it. So you see these first attributes that we have here, no conflicts. Then I get down to my poll suffix. So you see in base, when I took this work request out, my poll suffix was set to 75. But in the meantime, somebody has came in top, parent, right, and changed that poll suffix over to 3, 4. And then same thing for the foreign poll number. So this one, when the work request was taken out, was set to 6-75, and then in top, since the work request was initiated, it's changed to 6 3/4. And then you see how it assigns the different numbers here to the values, the differences between the different versions. So we've got those attributes, and then if I keep going down, you'll see we've got a difference here with the GPS location, the pole number anno. So you can, this pole number anno got shifted a little bit, so that's why it's telling me that there's a difference there. So this conflict right here, this is something I would want to resolve to parent. Somebody went in and changed that pole suffix and that foreign number, pole number, since this job was taken out. So that's a change that we would want to bring down from top so we don't lose that. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and do resolve to parent. And then you'll see in the conflict viewer here now, I've got check boxes next to all those objects. So again, you don't need to look at the child objects on this one because there's no conflicts. They'll show up in gray like that. So like I said before, you can shut those off if you don't want to see them, but there may be, you know, maybe some instance you do, but if you do want to turn the non-conflict objects off, click that show only objects, and then it'll go ahead and update your list. All right, so we took care of that first one. The second one here, let's see what difference we have. So let's see here, we've replaced our poll. Here in the work request, we went from a 45 to a 50. Then we have a difference here in the excess height. This is a 5E up in top, and in child, there's no excess length, so we were replacing it because we needed to go up. And you come down to the set date here, up in top, you see the set date 3/12, down in child, nothing because there is no set date, it's a replaced poll. The set date will get set when it goes to close out. And then down here in the bottom, you can see we've got a bunch of different differences in the annotations. And if I zoom in here, you can see the difference in where that pole was moved. So up in top, it's over here. In our work request, it's been corrected, and you can see all the other conductors and stuff like that snapped up to it. So this is another example. This one we would want to take child because, you know, the pole was replaced in this work request. We made that change here. So it's showing you the JPP as well. That's just going to show up under child because the pole was replaced. And then if I click on this one, you'll see here's the JPP from the parent object. So this one, we're going to want to resolve the child. So I'm going to right click and do resolve the child. All right, this was a good example. So you're going to see if there's associated objects with your conflict that it wants to take together. You know, if in this instance, we've got a pole, we got a whole bunch of wires snapped up to it, and, you know, it's not going to want to let you, it's going to take all those associated objects with it. So it's going to give you this pop-up. It's not very helpful at this point because it's going to tell you all these things, you know, depending on how you resolve the conflicts, it's going to show you all the objects here. So I'm going to go ahead and click yes on this. And then you see it's showing me in the viewer, it grabbed all those objects associated with that pole and resolved them to child as well to take those changes. Now, this would be something that you would want to review. So for this pole and this, all these objects here, I want to take a look through them and make sure that there's there isn't anything that we're missing, attributes that were changed. So we'll start up here at the poll. We already looked at that. We know that this one's good. We want to take what's in the work request, okay? The guy wire here, let's take a look through here. And see what's dealing with this. Okay, so this one is showing, just indicating because this has changed. This pole was moved to reflect where it was, presumably in the field. So the span guy has been moved. So we're good with that change. On our primary underground, if I look here, you see the difference in the route. If I zoom in here, might be a little bit difficult to see, but you see, I can see the old location where it was going over here to where the pole was previously, and then over here in child, it's now snapped up to my replaced pole over here. All right, and down to our pole here. We're going to take a look at or actually let's finish up with the rest of the ones that it resolved with our pole here. So you can see this piece of primary right here. We've got just some differences in the route of it. So now it's snapped up to where this replaced pole is. Basically, it looks like somebody, when they did this job, they corrected where this stuff was versus doing it in a file manager. So that's why we're getting the conflicts here. So this is indicating right here the route's been changed to that corrected location. So we're good on that. And then you see the wire annotation. The annotation conflicts are very common. You're going to see those all the time, but this is just showing that we have an install wire annotation on the piece of primary here, and you can see that highlighted here in the window. So we're good on that one. So let's take a look at this riser. So this one, yep, we want to keep, again, this is just, it grabs all the conflicts associated with that object. This riser is where we want it to be. It's in replace status. And last, same thing over here. We've got the piece of primary on the other side, just snapped up to that new pole location where it's been corrected to. All right, so you can see, I can tell now by looking at this, all these other conflicts that we had were associated with how I resolved this pole here. You can tell that with the check marks there. So we got to look at this pole right here. All right, so you can see here the difference is that since this job was taken out, we've got 5 for the foreign pole number in top, and then we've got, that was base when the job was taken out, and then up in top, we've got 25-5 up in top. So we would assume that that change is correct. So if I go in now, I'm going to do resolve to parent. And then you see that turns all those check boxes to green.
Can I ask a question? So the child says 5.
What's that?
The child says 5 on the poll numbers where you were just a moment ago. So the child is what, right there, the child was what was changed in the work request, right?
Child, yeah, it would be what's in the work request, not necessarily what we're selecting. For the conflict resolution. So yeah, child is what's in your work request, what the attribute is there.
So then sometime in your, so the base is what it started as, right? The
Yep.
parent is what it is when the work request is
Now.
created. Yeah, what it is now at the top.
Up and
And
top.
the child
Yep.
is what, so
Is in
somebody changed it to 5?
No.
I'm just trying to understand how the...
Sure. So yeah, you had everything right with the definition. So base is top when the work request was taken out. So this foreign poll number when this work request was taken out was 5, right?
Okay.
And then over here in parent, that's what's in top right now. Another job has come in and changed this to this 25-5.
Okay, I see.
And then
And then
in
because...
child, in my work request, we still got the 5. And then current, this is the combination of, this is what it's going to look like,
Okay.
you know, after I've picked everything in conflict resolution.
Okay. So everything is okay there because everything is okay, right? Because it's going to pick the correct one anyway in the current.
Not necessarily.
So,
well, yeah, what's in current is what I'm selecting. This will change based on what you do within the conflict resolution.
Okay.
So I've already gone in, I hit, and this is what I was saying before, if you mess something up and you're like, oh man, I really want to change that, if I go now back to that conflict and I hit child, you'll see it updates current to what I set it to.
I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah, so you can go in and make changes to that. Like I said, the complete merge is the point of no return. Once you do that, then you can't make any changes to the conflicts.
Okay.
All right, so we got a couple more to look at. So we've got a primary OH here, you can see. And it looks like it snaps right up to, let's see, is this going to our Disney here? So I'm going to zoom in and take a look at that. Okay, so you can see this one triggered because it's associated with something that we did here at design point 3. So I don't think I mentioned it yet. This is important. When it's triggering conflicts, you know, you saw in that last example, it wanted, or when I resolved for that poll, it grabbed everything in forced resolution for all the objects. So when there's conflicts, it basically, when GIS evaluates what it's looking at for the conflicts, it almost creates a buffer. So say you might only be changing a pole, but if there's wires, primary, secondary, services, guy wires, street light, whatever attached to it, it's going to look at those as well to see if there's conflicts with those objects. So it kind of creates a buffer area around your work request, where you're making changes, where it's going to evaluate them. So, all right, so for this piece of primary here, so this one's pretty simple. This is just an annotation difference. So the location of the line voltage anode and the feeder voltage anode changed. So if I go down the line here, you should be able to see that. So you see right there in the work request. Let me zoom in. You've got the annotations. So you'll see stuff like that. So this would be an example. For this one, we would want to keep what's in child. So we're keeping those annotations that we put in the work request. All right, and last but not least, we've got this last poll here. So let's see what we got doing with that. Take a look at our attributes. Okay, this one, it looks like it just triggered for the GPS location. There was an update to that. So I'm going to go ahead and just keep what's in child. So again, for these where you're not making any changes, you can manually click that green checkbox to indicate that you made a change there. So this is a pretty meaty example for us to look at for our first one, but it was a good one because you guys got to see a lot of different, you know, point objects like poles and spans and stuff like that as well. And you got to see how, you know, it tries to group the conflicts together. If there's a difference, you know, like we had in this one right here, where, you know, up in top, we've got the poles over here, the stub poles over here, but then in the work request where the pole's getting replaced, the planner corrected it to look like it does out in the field. They moved everything over to here and snapped all the conductors, trench, and all that up to it. So any questions on anything that I did? Are you all asleep?
Well, feedback here is good. Keep going.
All right. So at this point, I got everything green here. I've looked at these. I am confident in my selection, so I'm ready to complete my merge. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Complete Merge. You'll get this pop-up here. The merge is complete. The conflict viewer will go away. And you'll get that process is complete, and we're good to go. And then I will come back after the call and post this work request. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at another example, and I am going to pick on somebody on the phone. This is an oldie but a goodie. This one's from, looks like it's from 2010. And yeah, you have that refresh design in two spots. You got it up here in the main menu, and then you also have it under the file menu. You can use either of them when you're doing the refresh. All right, so for this piece of secondary conductor here, got a few things going on. So it's been replaced. We can tell that by, you know, we're existing in base and parent, but in child, we're replace, remove. So presumably we want to keep that change, but we got to look down through here and see if we have any other attributes that are in conflict. So you'll see here, we've got a difference between parent and what's in child, which is what I would expect to see because this piece of wire has been replaced. And it looks like we've got, if we take a look here, oh, hold on. Yeah, if you take a look through here, yeah, it looks like somewhere it got changed slightly with the route of the wire. And then down below, we've got a net cut. Let's zoom in, look at that. All right, it looks like the location of this changed slightly. That's why it triggered a conflict on that. Oh, and the piece, yeah, this is just telling me, so when you replace a piece of wire, it gives it a different GIS ID, so there's a difference with which piece of secondary conductor that net cut is associated with. So you can see here for parent, the existing wire, 247591111, and then over here in child, we've got a different GIS ID. So something changed on this piece of secondary. And then last, we've got the secondary annotation here. So this is just showing this piece of secondary was replaced in this work request, so it's got that annotation there. It's set to the status replace remove because it's being replaced in the work request.
Jeremy, would that be consistent with they just upgraded the secondary cable?
Yep.
Okay. So this could be a pretty typical conflict then, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, you'll see a lot of stuff like this where if there's any change to the wire, whether it's an annotation or the route, it's gonna trigger a conflict on that in between what's in parent and what's in your work request.
Okay.
All right. So somebody on the phone, I'm going to pick on one person, so give me a volunteer from the phone.
I volunteer.
And
Diane.
this is?
Diane Cloud.
All right. So Diane, for the secondary conductor here, how do you think we would want to resolve that?
I definitely think all of the changes I see should be resolved to child because basically you'd be undoing what someone did in their job by resolving to parent. So I don't even know that, I don't know if it's necessary to go piece by piece and resolve to child for each individual conflict. Well, there's only two, I guess. Or whether you could just merge to child altogether.
Yep. So you'll see if I right click now and I do resolve to child, you'll see here it's going to grab those associated objects, the secondary open, and the getting a lot of feedback on the line. Somebody's crumbling paper. Thank you. So you'll see it grabbed all those associated objects with it. So the open and the annotations, it's set to child. And then you see it also changed all of those to green, so you know that they've been looked at. All right, so good job on that one. So same thing on the second one. What do you think on this one?
Again, I think the secondary anode is only due to the fact that you're replacing the cable, so the anode showed up. I don't think the anodes are necessary, so that one I could go either way on because I don't like secondary anodes everywhere, but that's just me. Yep.
So yeah, there were a couple changes on this one. So it looks like the route of the wire actually changed like a tiny bit in between what's in top and what's in our job.
Yeah.
Let me zoom in here a little bit and see if we can see the difference. It's sometimes hard to tell when you're looking at it in the conflict viewer because it turns it into that yellow color for whatever you have highlighted. But presumably when we replace this wire here, there was some change made to it that we want to keep. And then if I look at the annotation, yeah, we want to keep that as replace remove because that's what we did in our job. So this is another one that set the child. So you see, the conflict viewer will try to make a decision. When it does the merge, what it thinks it wants you're going to want to resolve to. So you see this one's already set the child. So I don't have to change anything. I mean, you can go in and do the resolve the child, and then it's going to check those boxes, or you can just click on those. But no, so this one, we want to keep all those changes that were made in this job. We looked at all the associated objects with the opens and everything. We're going to be good from a connectivity standpoint, so we're good to resolve the child on this one. So good job, Diane.
Hey, Jeremy, this is Lauren. Just to kind of touch on something that that Diane said earlier. Sometimes it's hard to be objective when you're looking at the work you did in your work request. So when you say, I want to keep what's in the job, because then if I don't, then I have to redo it. Well, sometimes that may be the case. You may, in some situations, need to take what's in parent, bring it down into your job, and then do a replace on that object. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind, that may be the situation that you're in. You can't always just default to what's in the work request.
Yep. Yeah, and there's also going to be those situations too, like Lauren said, where the other option that you have is going in and doing kind of that hybrid resolution where you may go into your piece of secondary and say there was something up in parent that you wanted to keep, but you wanted to resolve the child so that you kept it as a replaced wire. Say the length was different up in top. I could go in, change that, click update, and then I would still have that change from top, but, keep it where I'm resolving to what's in my work request. So, yeah, just be, like Lauren said, just be conscious of, always going to what's in your work request. You got to look at the associated changes to make sure that you're not breaking anything.
Quick
All right,
question.
so sure.
Quick question. Does it always give you a suggested resolve to in that column?
Generally, yes. If it sees that it's something where, you're replacing that object in your work request, it'll give you that suggested resolve to. Some instances, it won't.
And one last question. Once you complete the merge,
yep.
I'm trying to remember, does it throw you right out of the job? Like, how do you know you accomplished what you wanted to?
Sure. I can show. Yeah. I can show that to you right now. So
okay.
This is a little bit different because I'm in a post-pending work request. This job's already been constructed. It just tried to close out and it had conflicts. If you're in something that's proposed, when you get done doing conflict resolution, it's just going to bring you right back into your job, but you'll get a pop-up. So if I click on this complete merge right now, it's going to say the merge is complete. It's going to think here for a second. And then I get a second pop-up that says process is complete. So if you were in your work request, you'd be back in there writable at this point. I'm not, this is post-pending, so it's going to stay in that read-only status. So any other questions on that one?
I have one other general question. Are you saying that when we are in a design and we move things around, like to make it more accurate to what is going on in real life, that we're creating conflicts when they try to post the job later?
Yes. Yep. So that's why I was saying earlier, if you can, if you go out to the field and, right now your ESR hasn't been sent over to GIS yet, right? So you go out to the field, you take your notes, this pole's moved here, whatever that change is, it's better to do that in a file manager before you take that job out. If you do it in a file manager and post that up the top, you're not going to create that conflict when your job goes to close out. Because if you make the corrections in the job, and then there's that difference in between what's in top and what's in your job, somebody's going to have to resolve that on the back end, and make a decision, and, potentially could make it incorrectly. So it's definitely better to, make those corrections in a file manager before you initiate your work request.
One last question.
Sure.
So go into a design, and that's usually what you do is bring it to propose, and you start working it, and you realize something's really off. At that point, if you get out of your design, go in and do a file manager to correct the data, then go and wait for it to post to top, and then go back into your design, you're automatically going to have a conflict, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. If you do the file manager up front before, basically when you take that job and you shift it from new work over to proposed, that's your starting point. So if you do your changes in a file manager before that, when you take your work request, it's going to have those changes in it, so you won't be creating conflicts, for somebody else down the line. Any other questions? All right, we'll move on to the next example. I'll go ahead and do my merge. All right, so we've got conflicts. All right, another volunteer from the phone, please. Don't all speak up at once.
Yeah, I will. Steve Susie.
Hey, Steve.
What's the...
All right, so this one right here, we've got a piece of secondary conductor that is associated with where we've got a replacement. We can see here the green piece of or the blue piece of service wire here. So I'm just going to scroll through the list. So we don't have any conflicts up here. But then down here, you can see that the route of the wire has changed. The route and the actual route. And then we've got this secondary annotation here that there's no conflict with. So how do you think we would want to resolve this one?
The only difference is the new service wire to the new service point. So you would resolve it to child.
Correct. So when you have, and this is where kind of that buffer I was talking about, it's going to look at if you have a new piece of wire that's snapping up to an existing wire like that, that's going to change the topology of the wire. Because that new piece of wire, in this case, the service wire snapped up to it. So that's correct. So for this one, we would want to take what's in child. I'm going to right click on that, do resolve to child. And we've got secondary conductor, secondary annotation, secondary service, and service point are related and will be resolved together. Do you wish to proceed? Yes, we do. So, like I said, in some cases that pop-up, if there's a lot of stuff like that last one, it tells you what objects that it's going to resolve, but, basically it was just telling you here that it's going to grab that secondary annotation associated with it and resolve that as well. So In this case, we don't really have to go in and review what was changed, but with a more complex example like we had in that last one, you got to look at everything to make sure that you're resolving correctly.
Hey, Jeremy,
Right.
this is
Yes.
Jeremy. It's Sam. So in that pop-up, it noted that it was making a change to a service point, but service point isn't in the list of conflicts. So would that be something that you want to track once you do the merge if it's going to affect your service point even though you're not resolving to parent or child for that service point? Does that make sense? That
Yep.
question? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, you get into, there may be those associated objects that it's not going to show you interactively in the conflict viewer, but there's a change. So just be conscious of that. All right, so we're good on this one. We've hit resolve to child. We're confident in our selections. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on the complete merge. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And our conflicts have been resolved. All right, let's grab another example. Bear with me for 1 second.
Oh, hey, Jeremy, this is Jim Perry. Where are you physically located? Your machine is, like, really fast. Are you in Syracuse?
I'm in Syracuse.
Okay.
So listen, don't jinx me.
Well,
Usually, as you saw earlier, usually we have issues when we're doing, for whatever reason, with the Citrix applications, when you're doing WebEx, it locks up, like you saw earlier when I was trying to get started. So, but we'll just knock on wood and hope it keeps running like that. All right, that one's been resolved. Let's grab another one. Mm-hmm. All right, another victim from the phone, please. Don't all jump up at once. All right, so I'll just go in and do this one. So this is a fairly large piece of secondary conductor that's super spanned here. And if I scroll through, we look at the bottom attributes here, we can see none of these other objects, they're in the light gray, there's no conflict with them. And then if I go up top here, the topology of the wire has changed. You can see that for the type. So that just means somewhere in this wire, there's probably another piece of wire or that was snapped up to it, or some kind of change. So I'm going to zoom in down here. You can see them really small, but you see the design points here. So here was the change right here. So we had this new...
Hey, Jeremy?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Sam, when you say topology, do you mean like a vertex was added on that span? Like the geometry doesn't change, but something within the geometry changes? Okay.
Yep. So if I'm going to go out into the job here, I'll show you guys what I'm talking about really quick. And knowing how to check topology is actually good for troubleshooting where you have issues. So got this little baby piece of secondary right here that's coming off the existing piece of, or I'm sorry, the little piece of service rather that's coming off our secondary. So if you want to check topology on something to see what the difference is, let's see here, edit topology. So you go to Tools, Edit Topology, Manifolds, and then by default, this is going to be opened up. It won't always open up to where it's supposed to be. You want it on GIS Electric. And then you want to check this box right here that says Nodes. And then you'll see, oh, I've got all these wonderfully colored boxes with numbers that appeared on the screen. So what that's telling you, it basically, topology, it creates those numbers based on how many connections are at that point, right? So a piece of service at the end here, it only has that one connection to the service wire. Here, where it's connected to a piece of secondary, we've got a 3 because there's 3 connections. You know, for the connector right here for the street light, we've got a 1. So it will, when something's snapped up, it makes that topology change. If you turn these on, that'll show you what the topology is in that area. So, you know, same thing with up here. This piece of service has 1 connection to the service point, and then up here, it's associated with this piece of secondary. So you've got a 2 there. So if I were to go in, and I'm not going to do it, but if I were to go in and change this piece of secondary right here, well, you know what, I will do it. We'll go back and change it back. So if I take this piece of secondary here and modify it, so we've got the 2 there right now. Oh, hold on, just select it first. There we go. So if I take that and I move that off, oh, hold on. I cannot GIS today, apparently. Here we go. This is what I was trying to do. See now, that changes to 1s. So I'm not connected there anymore. So it's basically just telling you, you know, it shows you from a connectivity standpoint how many connections you have at any given point. So let me take that back. Actually, we can just do and whoever brought up how fast things were running earlier, this is the point where I yell at you.
Sorry about that, Jinx, then.
Yes. Looks like it's moving along. Oh, come on. All right, so we'll give it another minute here to come back. But this may be the end of the live presentation due to it being locked up. So Eric, I'll talk to you offline, but I think it would make sense maybe I can go through with the folks that are going to get the access, maybe offline, go through a couple more examples with each one just to ensure that, give them some more experience, through doing their first couple resolutions, and then we'll give them the access. So any questions on anything that I've done today?
Jeremy, did you take a look at audit history to show people how to see when recent changes are posted?
I did not. I did that in the last session, but
okay.
I did not do it here. Let me see if I can, if it's even going to let me.
Or if you have another GIS session open, maybe you could just show people where that is. So while he's doing that, let me just add a little bit of context here. There are currently 2 projects happening, the New England GIS data cleanup and the New York GIS data cleanup. And there are teams of people that are actively correcting and changing what is in top based on what our field contractors are finding. So they're sending in photos and they're doing field checks, and there's a team of people that are actually correcting data in GIS. I think it's important to understand how to look at the audit history of a record so that you can make a decision about, whether you want to keep what's in your work request or merge down what's in top and then do your design changes to that object. But really just want everyone to be aware that those 2 projects are happening right now and will be happening over the next 2 to 3 years.
Oh, good. Look, it's back. All right, wonderful. So let's finish up the conflict resolution, and then we will, I can show you guys the audit history records. So for this one, we want to keep what is in our child alternative here. We want that wire to be connected up to that piece of secondary. We've already got it set, resolve the child here. GIS picked that based on, the changes, and that's what we want to keep. So I'm going to go ahead and click on complete merge. Merge is complete. And then...
So you don't have to resolve to anything if it's already resolved. You can just complete the merge and that's it.
I mean, you want to look at it,
Yeah,
you don't want to
look at it, but then if it's already selected,
right.
You don't have to do the green check mark and all that stuff. You can just...
No, you don't have to. On a simple one like
Okay.
that, you don't have to. So if you, hold on here, we go back to where we were. Let's go back to our piece of secondary. Obviously, with these nodes turned on, it's kind of horrible to look at when you get out to a bigger area like that. So if you do go in and turn those nodes on to check connectivity, you just click on that, and then if I do a refresh out here in my map view, the nodes go away. So this is a handy tool for checking connectivity. Like if you're getting an error that something's not connected, if you go in and you turn these on, they're sometimes really helpful if you're in a congested area. So for the audit history records that Lauren was talking about, so if I go into, say, this piece of triplex here, the service, and then you've got this tab over here, object relationships. If I click on that, you'll see I've got audit history with a 6 next to it. Getting a lot of feedback on the phone. If you could hit mute. Thank you. So you'll see here you've got the audit history record. So it'll sort them from oldest to newest. So you can see here, this is when this shows me that this piece of wire was put in this work request back on May 10th, and shows me the user as well. And then it tracks any other changes. So, you know, you'll see right here, the geometry was inserted, I put the actual route in, and then up here, you'll see I put the annotation in there for the service as well. That's the number 2 try install annotation that you see here. So if I go to, we'll just come over here to this existing pole. And you see here, go into my audit history. So if it's an older object pole or any object that was replaced maybe back in the old system, you might not see audit history records from when it was installed. So like this one right here, it just has a bunch of pole number annotation changes. It doesn't show me, you know, who installed it and when. So you might not be able to go that far back as to when it was installed. So you can see like this pole right here, if I look at this, you know, again, it's going from oldest to newest. You can see somebody came in, made a bunch of changes, and then, you know, this is when it went to post. It set it from replace to existing. So it tracks all of those changes that are made by the system, say when something posts, or interactively, like this one right here, I can see somebody went in and changed the class. Presumably this was an as-built change for that pole, changing it from 4 to 3. So those are the audit history records. So they're outside of the conflict viewer. You know, they're handy for being able to discern who made what changes to an object and when. So another tool to help you, you know when changes were made to an object and aid with your conflict resolution. So any questions on the audit history records? All right, I'll presume we have no questions on that. So, all right, so that concludes the presentation for today. Does anyone else have any other questions about anything that we did?
Not here in Worcester.
Okay, sounds good. Well, like I said, the important thing, you know, once you start doing conflict resolution, if you're unsure of anything you're doing, you know, just stop. Grab me, grab somebody from Lauren's group, grab somebody from within your group who's got, you know, who's done conflict resolution. You know, the important thing is just reaching out and asking. All right. We went a little bit over today, but I appreciate everybody's time. So, Eric, back over to you.
All right, sounds good. Lauren and Jeremy, if you guys could stick on the line after this, just talk real quick for 2 or 3 minutes. And other than that, everybody, thank you for attending, and we'll reach back out to you. Check out that SharePoint site, look at those job aids, get all your conflicts entered into that tracker, and start using that 265 requirement. Other than that, have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are we going to meet in the lobby of the theater and have the ticket?
All right, Jeremy, hold on.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
As far as getting access for these folks, what was the thing you were mentioning at the end?
Yeah, I think, you know, the big thing, we just want to make sure that they're comfortable with what they're doing. So I think what I'll do with the list that you send me, I'll get with those people offline and go through a couple more with them. I can just shadow them on their machine and, just go through a couple more with them and then, get them set up with the access. So, Lauren, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here. And one of the things I'm wondering about is, are we really identifying a limited number of people in each region, or are we just trying to give this to everybody?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big thing. We want to make sure that, it stays kind of a super user function. I know you guys are structured a little bit differently in New England, but, still we want it to be a limited function that, certainly not everybody has, but we have enough people in each location that, it's not too much of a burden for them to be able to resolve the conflict. So, like, for New York, back, I was still on the help desk, so this is like 5 years ago for New York. We basically went through, did the same training, and in each, location or barn, like my office, I've got 20 planners here, right? I've got 4 people that have conflict resolution. So, some of the smaller ones like Utica, where we've got 10 planners, we have, probably like 2 or 3 there that have the conflict resolution, that are generally it was given to people that were senior planners with a lot of experience, just because if it's done incorrectly, there's a lot that can go wrong, especially when it breaks, connectivity, and that's a lot of the concern that Lauren's group has just around all the data initiatives that they're doing. So I don't know if you want to talk about that more, Lauren.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be able to see when and how conflict decisions are made, and we are going to reserve the right to revoke access. And I don't want to do that. I want to enable the business to work through these issues, because you all are the experts on this stuff, right? So, but because we had all those problems in the past, and because we need to maintain the integrity of the data and the system going forward, we're going to be keeping a very close eye on what's going on. So again, I just wanted to reiterate that we really want this to be super users, people who are very comfortable not only with the data but with the tool itself, and because it can be confusing as you're looking at a long list of conflicts.
Yeah, so what I'm shooting for here is in New England is to set up, basically get at least one person on each platform that is, we can call a subject matter expert on it, and we've been training, we got between 10 to 15 people on each platform, and so we're training maybe a third of them right now, and get them the access. But what I want to do is basically conduct some periodic training with the subject matter experts there, and have them, we can set it up where, they need to supervise somebody doing these conflict resolutions, so we can build us a cadre of folks that are really comfortable doing it and know the pitfalls of it. Mm-hmm. So that's what I want to roll out here for that. So I guess what we really need is, I'm going to go out and solicit that, get 1 or 2 names from each platform that can be that type of person, and then build up, some more folks through on-the-job training. But what I think we need to do now is really take a look at who has access and hit reset on that. We can make it be very specific on who we have it. But right now we have, a bunch of folks that have had access for a very long time, haven't been doing it, haven't been to the training again. And so it's sort of a mix. So I guess I'll
Okay.
reach out to you guys. Is it who actually has the access to take people off and on that list? Where would be the actual moving forward? Who's going to handle that?
So we on the phone all have the access to do that, but I'm still thinking this needs to go through the field force team. So they're controlling access to the application, right? So they should be aware of who's been trained and who they can give this access to. So I think we need to still work that out with Fran and the IT people. But right now, if you have a list of people right now or very soon that we can add, we can do that for you.
Yeah, I'm working on, I'm getting there documenting that they attended training into Learning Link, and I'm going to use that as part of it. And then what Jeremy said about coaching some people through, we can do that for a couple, though, but I want to set it up so that the local subject matter expert can do that, and maybe Jeremy going through with the SMEs, because some of those subject matter experts will be more comfortable with it than others. So I think instead of going through with everybody, to be respectful of Jeremy's time, and I can go through the help desk, get that kicked off to at least force them to figure it out, or I mean, like we said, for the initial batch, I can add them, but I guess, probably the way I'd see it working, once they've gone through the training, whether it's me sending an email to the help desk or you and copying me and just saying, hey, these are the people that went through the training, they're good, they can add them to the system. So, I know it seems like a lot, but I've been on the, we're kind of scrutinizing who has the access, but, I said before, things can really get sideways. I mean, I remember this was in New England. Somebody contacted the help desk and said, hey, can you post this work request up the top? It's got conflicts. And I don't remember the exact circumstances. I just remember that it broke connectivity on 2 feeders, and it ended up taking me probably 10 hours to fix it and get everything connected back up again to the way that it was supposed to up in top. So, obviously those are that's kind of worst case scenario, but that's what can happen if it's done incorrectly. Yeah. So I know the help desk went away, but is there still like a structure around that? People that are, I mean, Lauren, you said you're going to be watching data quality and the progression of this. Is there anybody out there that is at least still monitoring it from the help desk folks, or is that basically you?
Yeah. So there's still one person on the GIS help desk that's now on the field force team. So they are still going to go to him as a reference for user requests, right? Our team, as data process and improvement, we are actively monitoring everything across the board. So, we're running reports, we're running data quality checks on the back end every night. So that is a specific function of our team. I don't know that the GIS guy is doing anything like that at a larger scale like we are.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think they are. I don't think they have the resources to anymore. I mean, I don't know. Do they still have? Is there anybody still from Eric Vanderwater's team that looks at stuff like this when the build breaks?
Yeah, we work closely with the OMS support team, the CNI group, on a weekly basis, but we don't want it to get to them, though. That's the problem. If they are
absolutely.
If they are seeing the errors in the OMS, we're too late. We've already screwed this up. So the hope is that we can get that stuff before it gets to them.
Yep. Absolutely.
So this might be me being ignorant, but the Storms help desk, that's a completely separate group?
That's also a group that no longer exists. So the one guy they left, that's the one guy they left on Storms. It's my understanding that he is now gone. So I think they're relying on the field force help desk alone there for that.
Okay. I've been focused on the GIS side of things, but I'm just wondering what we've lost there.
Everything.
Yeah. I wonder.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know. That's a good question for Fran Company. Who's monitoring that day-to-day stuff on the storm side? Because, I mean, I know the interfaces go down fairly frequently, and, you know, a lot of times it's on the storm side. So I don't know who's kind of doing the proactive day-to-day, you know, the hamster's running in the wheel. So.
Yeah, I think we've asked that question many times. I don't think that there's a good answer that we're gonna like. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I gotta shake the trees here with my group then, and see what they had traditionally reached out to the storm help desk for as well, and make sure at least we're not going to be the cause of a failure here.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, a lot of the stuff that I would see from my group that they would have to contact the storms help desk would be like issues with things not going over to GIS. Maybe they have something correct or incorrect. You know, 271 errors where they need to look at the service details tab and verify that.